story, The Fwog Pwince.
Now then, you probably know the story of the Frog Prince. I mean, it goes like this. An obviously spoilt princess called Petulant drops her golden ball into a well and makes a great fuss about it. And then a talking frog appears and fetches the ball. And the obviously spoilt princess is horrible to him, but it turns out that he's a handsome prince called Pipsqueak who's been transformed by a wicked witch. And then they get married. Have you ever wondered about all this? I mean, like, why play with an expensive golden ball when an old tennis ball would do? And was the princess surprised to meet a talking frog? And would the prince really marry the princess after she'd been so nasty to him? And would she marry him in view of his shady past? I mean, what do you think?
Once upon a time, there was a handsome young prince who had the misfortune to offend a wicked witch. In order to avenge herself, the witch cast a spell over the prince, turning him into an ugly frog.
Well, now, let's get the facts straight. Prince Pipsqueak certainly wasn't handsome. I mean, he was a prince, all right. I mean, you could tell that at a glance. Well, at least you could before he got turned into a frog. After that, of course, it was a bit more difficult. Here's Prince Pipsqueak before, and here he is after. You have to admit that the witch did a thorough job. Take a good look at the before Pipsqueak. Note the princely trappings, castle with attached moat, crown, horse, coach, servants, smart clothes, far too much pocket money, and ridiculously expensive shoes. Of course, if you took all that away, he would seem perfectly ordinary. Until he opened his mouth, that is. And when he did that, he used a certain tone of voice. And you could tell right away that he wasn't normal. Ugh, that tone of voice. I mean, it was bold, brash, and bossy. It was snooty, snobby, and sneery. It was haughty, high-handed, and hoity-toity. And, it cut through conversations like a hedge trimmer cuts through privet. I say, peasant, throw down your cloak. I, the prince, wish to cross over this puddle. You there, waiter, this cup is cracked. Don't you know I'm the prince? Ah, you see what I mean? I mean, let's face it. Prince Pipsqueak had a way of saying things that was guaranteed to get people's backs up. I mean, it even got his mother, Queen Mona's back up. Oh, Pipsqueak, I do wish you'd speak to Pipsqueak Junior, the Queen would say to the King, whose name was also Pipsqueak, Pipsqueak Senior. I mean, he's got this certain tone of voice. It's most unpleasant. I can't think who he gets it from. It's certainly not from me. To which the King would reply, "Good grief, Mona! Are you suggesting that the boy gets that certain tone of voice from me? Absolute rubbish!" So, now you know about Pipsqueak's tone of voice, how it got people's backs up, and who he got it from. And it certainly got Mrs. McNaughty's back up. Mrs. McNaughty was the old woman who was employed to weed the garden and empty the rubbish bins and keep the moat free of leaves. She lived in a tumble-down hut in the castle grounds, and everyone said she was a witch. Here's Mrs. McNaughty. Doesn't look that bad, does she? Quite a jolly old stick, really. In fact, Mrs. McNaughty wasn't even a witch anymore, let alone a wicked one. She had retired from witchcraft. Well, there wasn't the call for it these days. She much preferred gardening. She liked pottering around, plucking out the odd nettle and scolding the odd snail. It was easy work and the hours were good. She hardly ever bothered with magic anymore, confining herself to the occasional anti-slug spell. Except at full moon, of course. Full moon always made her corns play up, and when her corns were playing up, she was wicked. Right. Now it's time to tell you what really happened on that fateful morning. Prince Pipsqueak woke as usual, yawned, stretched, fetched, and ding, 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 beat his personal bedside gong. And that was the signal for the servants to hop to it. A maid drew the curtains, a minstrel wandered in and sang a flattering song, a jester did a funny dance, a hairdresser brushed his hair, a valet brought his slippers, his crown was placed on his head, and someone blew on his dressing gown just to warm it. Just another typical morning, really. Lovely day, sir, said Grovel, the butler, crawling in on his knees. Ooh, how handsome you look, first thing. It's a nice day for a dip, I'd say, humbly speaking. I say, said Pipsqueak. Smart thinking, Grovel. I shall take a refreshing dip in the moat and practice my breaststroke. All right, gather round, you servants, and listen to my orders. Blah-de, 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 etc., etc., etc. Anyway, at length, Pipsqueak was equipped, and off he strode down the stairway and across the hall, and the guards scurried to open the big main doors, while Pipsqueak frowned, complaining loudly in that awful voice of his, and then out he strode into the sunshine. Now, it was unfortunate that Mrs. McNaughty had chosen just that moment to take her first tea break of the morning, and there'd been a full moon the night before. Her corns were killing her, and as there was no one around, she sat down at the edge of the moat and removed her boots and lowered her poor old throbbing feet into the cool water. Oh, lovely, lovely, lovely. And there she sat, muttering to herself and taking big slurps of tea out of her old cracked cup. Oh, lovely, lovely, lovely. But it was then that Pipsqueak emerged. Pipsqueak took one look and then made his terrible mistake. He used that certain tone of voice on Mrs. McNaughty. Now listen here, said Pipsqueak. If you don't take your disgusting feet out of my moat immediately, I shall have you arrested. Yes, arrested. I can do what I like, you know. I'm the prince. Not anymore, you're not, said Mrs. McNaughty. And it was as simple as that. Mrs. McNaughty's magic might have been rusty, but she still had the touch. One moment, Pipsqueak was a prince standing by the side of his own moat in his own castle grounds, and one small pink puff of smoke later, he was a frog. Not only that, he was a frog who had been transported several miles away into a deep, muddy well, which just happened to be slap bang in the middle of a courtyard belonging to a rival king. Which just goes to show you how careful you must be when you're talking to witches.
The king of the neighbouring country had a daughter who was so beautiful that even the sun was enchanted every time he saw her. Sometimes the princess would play in the palace grounds where there was a well full of deep, clear water.
Beautiful? Princess Petulant? Not with her nose. Ugh. The only person who thought Petulant was beautiful was her dad, the king. But then he would. King Prosperous was his name, and he ran the much bigger kingdom next door. And running a successful kingdom is a lucrative business, and King Prosperous was incredibly, outrageously, unbelievably rich. This is King Prosperous, promising extra bank holidays and a better carriage service and stiffer sentences for witches and wizards. My word is my bond, was his campaign slogan. He drove through the streets throwing gold coins and pieces of fruitcake about. A clever ruse which was guaranteed to make people like him. In fact, his advisors informed him that the emperorship was as good as in the bag. King Pipsqueak Sr., who also would have liked to have been an emperor, was terribly jealous about this, and the two families didn't really speak. Talk about ostentation, Queen Mona would sniff. He's got too much money for his own good. There'll be no holding him when he's emperor. If he's emperor, Pipsqueak Sr. would sneer, he hasn't got the job yet, remember? Oh, don't be silly, Pipsqueak. It's as good as settled. I mean, you're hardly in the running. Nobody's going to vote for you, are they? What's a castle compared to a palace? And talking of palaces, when are we going to get one? It was all true. King Prosperous was a snob, and he did have far too much money. And, like most rich, doting fathers, he spent a great deal of it on his daughter, Princess Petulant. Hey, I bet you're dying to see her, aren't you? So here she is. See what I mean about the nose? Anyway, King Prosperous spent hours in the shops buying things for Petulant. You name it, Petulant had it. There was an aviary, well stocked with birds of prey, a billiard table, her very own elephant, a drum kit, a doll's hotel, Kingdomopoly, which is like Monopoly except that you buy whole kingdoms, a lighthouse, a music centre, a pet string quartet, a stuffed unicorn, a Venetian gondola, a full-sized snow-white musical magical wishing well, a yak herd, and a pet zebra. And you thought Pipsqueak was spoiled. Anyway, this particular morning,
King Prosperous was taking breakfast on the patio.
he liked it there.
He was planning a pleasant hour working on his extension plans. He was working out how best to extend his kingdom into an empire. "Hello, Sugar Plum," he said as Princess Petulant glanced up, scowling.
She'd only been up 10 minutes and was already bored with all her toys.
"And how is my pretty little popsicle this morning?"
Inquired King Prosperous fondly.
"Have a chocolate. Look, tickets for the zoo, like I promised. My word is my bond. Hey, that's my campaign slogan, you know. I think it should go down quite well with the voters, you know. Now, come and give your old dad a kissy-wissy. And I'll show you the present I bought you." "What is it?"
sighed Petulant.
"Surprise, surprise! It's a golden ball!" said King Prosperous. "Solid gold, that is, very exclusive. Specially made by a master gold balls man. Only the best for my daughter. Do you like it?"
"It's all right, I suppose," said Petulant. "It's a pity it's not a bit bigger. Why can't I have a pet dolphin?"
"I will order you one right away. Anything else I can do for my little jelly baby?"
"Yes. When are you going to get rid of that stupid snow-white musical magical wishing well?"
I will give orders to have it removed immediately, darling one. My word is my bond."
He was hopelessly mad, of course. But a short time later, Petulant strolled into the palace courtyard. And she glared at the snow-white magical wishing well and gave it a spiteful kick. And it attempted to play a rusty bar or two of "Someday my prince will come," and wheezed into silence. Here's the well. Doesn't live up to its name, does it? It's one of King Prosperous's less successful surprise gifts. No, it looked rather nice in the catalogue, but like most things ordered from catalogues, it doesn't quite come up to expectations. Apart from looking tatty and cluttering up the place, it was terribly smelly. Pooh-er. I mean, leaves clogged it, moss grew on it, birds flew over it, and did even worse. In short, the snow-white musical magical wishing well was a dump. Also, Petulant threw things down there when she was in a temper, so it was jam-packed with broken toys. Muttered Petulant. "Wishing well my foot. I'll be glad to get rid of you." And idly, she began to throw the golden ball around.
Hey, stay tuned because part 2 of The Fwog and the Prince is tomorrow at 4:15 here on Children's BBC. Am I Prince Petulant? Thank you very much to Kate Hickson, thank you Ed, for your picture. We'll be doing the winners, by the way.
Sam and Caitlin are here from bits of tearing down the Christmas decorations, smashing the baubles,